Have you ever paused in the quiet of the afternoon and wondered, is the way I'm living still serving me? Or am I simply repeating habits that no longer bring joy, meaning, or strength? This isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. Because many of us, as we grow older, unknowingly hold on to behaviors that seem harmless, but silently chip away at our health, our freedom, and our inner peace. These are not dramatic choices. They are small, daily patterns. Habits you've grown comfortable with. But here's the truth. What was once helpful might now be harmful. Today, I want to speak to that part of you that still yearns to live fully. You deserve more than survival. You deserve energy, connection, and dignity. And often, the first step is not doing something new, but stopping something old. In this video, I'll walk you through 7 common habits that many seniors carry into their later years, often unconsciously. But if you recognize them and choose to let them go, you may find that this stage of life becomes your most empowered yet. If that resonates with you, stay with me. And if you're new here, I invite you to subscribe and follow along, because every week we dive deeper into the wisdom, health, and spirit of aging well. 1. Sitting too much without real movement. You may not think about it often, but how many hours a day do you spend sitting? Reading the newspaper, watching TV, scrolling through your phone, or simply relaxing in your favorite chair? It adds up. And if you're like most older adults, you might be sitting more than you realize, sometimes for 7, 8, or even 10 hours a day. At first glance, it seems harmless. After all, you've earned the right to rest. You've spent decades working hard, raising a family, building a life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Too much sitting, without real, intentional movement, can quietly take your health and independence away, 1 hour at a time. You see, the human body wasn't made for stillness, especially not in this stage of life, when preserving your strength, balance, and circulation becomes more important than ever. And yet, the older we get, the more we tend to sit, out of habit, out of fatigue, or simply because no one told us how harmful it can be. The danger isn't just about the act of sitting, it's about what's not happening while you sit. Your muscles aren't working. Your blood isn't circulating properly. Your joints begin to stiffen. Your core and leg muscles weaken, making it harder to stand, walk, and keep your balance. Over time, this leads to what doctors call sarcopenia, a condition where muscle mass and strength gradually decline. And it doesn't just make life harder, it increases your risk of falls, fractures, chronic diseases, and even early death. Research from the Journal of Aging and Physical Activity has shown that older adults who remain sedentary for most of the day have a significantly higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, and depression. Worse yet, they are more likely to lose their independence, requiring help with daily tasks they once did with ease. Let me tell you about Roy. He's 70, a retired mechanic and one of the kindest men I've ever met. After retiring, Roy enjoyed his quiet time, reading the news, watching his favorite westerns, sitting on the porch. But over the years, he noticed changes. He started feeling unsteady on his feet. Climbing stairs felt harder. Getting up from the couch required effort. One morning, he tried to reach for something off a shelf and nearly fell. His legs shook. His heart raced. He wasn't sick, but he wasn't strong anymore. That day, he realized something important. He had rested so much that his body had forgotten how to move. Here's the good news. It's not too late. Your body is resilient even now. With small, regular doses of movement, you can begin rebuilding strength, improving circulation, and protecting your independence. You don't need to run marathons or join a gym. You just need to interrupt the stillness. Start by standing up every 30 to 60 minutes. Set a timer if you need to. March in place. Stretch your arms overhead. Roll your shoulders. Take 5 deep breaths. It may seem small, but these movements reactivate your muscles, boost your energy, and improve your blood flow. Add short walks into your day, not just a stroll around the house, but intentional steps where you focus on posture and pace. Consider gentle strength-building exercises like leg lifts, sit-to-stand movements, or light resistance band work. If you're not sure where to begin, talk to a physiotherapist who specializes in aging bodies. They can help you build a safe, realistic plan tailored to your needs. And most importantly, shift how you think about movement. It's not just exercise. It's your freedom in physical form. It's the ability to go to the grocery store without help, to walk in the park with your grandchild, to get out of bed tomorrow without hesitation. Rest is important, but rest should restore you, not weaken you. The chair should be a place you return to after moving, not where you stay all day. So here's your invitation. Don't wait for a fall, a scare, or a diagnosis to remind you of your strength. Stand up, breathe deeply, take one step, just one, because the longer you move, the longer you live with power, confidence, and choice. And if you're reading this while sitting, maybe it's time to stretch. 2, saying yes when you mean no. How many times in your life have you said yes when your heart was whispering no? At first, it seems like the polite thing to do. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You want to avoid conflict. You've always been the one who keeps the peace, who makes things easier for others, who doesn't rock the boat. But somewhere along the way, that habit of always saying yes, of putting everyone else's comfort ahead of your own, can quietly start to erode something far more important: your voice, your energy, and your self-respect. As we grow older, we often carry this behavior with us. It becomes second nature. We agree to favors we don't have the energy for. We say yes to visits when we'd rather rest. We allow others to make decisions on our behalf: what to eat, where to live, how to spend our time, because we think it's easier to go along than to speak up. But here's the truth no one tells you. The more you say yes to things that don't feel right, the more you say no to yourself. You begin to feel unseen. You start to question whether your needs matter. And slowly, without realizing it, you may start to feel like a background character in your own life. Let me tell you about Lorraine. She's 76, a retired librarian, and for most of her life, she was everyone's rock. Whenever her children needed something, she was there. When neighbors asked for help, she showed up. She even joined committees at church she didn't enjoy, just to be supportive. She was the yes woman. But one day, after being asked yet again to babysit her great-grandkids on a day she had planned to rest, something shifted. She realized she didn't want to, not because she didn't love her family, but because she was exhausted. And for the first time, she gently said, "Not today." She told me later that it felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she hadn't seen in years. Saying no doesn't mean you're being rude or selfish. It means you honor your limits, and that is an act of strength, not defiance. In fact, psychologists have long recognized that people who assert healthy boundaries tend to have better mental health and stronger own relationships. When you communicate honestly, others begin to respect your time, your energy, and your presence. They learn that your yes means something because it's real. If this feels hard for you, start small. The next time someone asks for something, pause. Ask yourself, do I truly want to do this? Do I have the energy? Am I doing this out of guilt or fear? If the answer is no, try saying, "I appreciate you asking, but I need to pass this time. I'm not up for that today, but thank you for thinking of me. I need to rest right now. Let's talk later." These responses are kind, clear, and powerful. You're not pushing anyone away. You're simply showing up for yourself. And here's the beauty of it. The more you practice, the more confident you become. You begin to trust your own judgment again. You start to feel more in control of your life, not just surviving each day, but actually choosing how to spend it. So let me ask you, when was the last time you said no and meant it? When was the last time you chose you? This season of life, your senior years, is not about fading into the background. It's about stepping fully into who you are, with the freedom to decide how you want to live. Saying no when you need to isn't about turning away from people. It's about turning back toward yourself. You've earned that, and you never need to apologize for it. 3, believing it's too late to change. There's a quiet belief that creeps in as we get older. You might not say it out loud, but it shows up in your choices, in your habits, in the way you shrink away from new things. It's the thought that whispers, it's too late now, too late to start again, too late to learn something new, too late to change direction or make a bold choice. But let me ask you, too late for what? If you're still breathing, still waking up each day with thoughts, emotions, and a pulse, then it's not too late for anything that matters. This belief that change is only for the young is one of the most dangerous lies we're sold as we age. It tells you to stop trying, stop dreaming, stop improving. It wraps itself in realism, but functions like resignation. And over time, it robs you not just of opportunities, but of hope. Let me tell you about Alvin. At 79, Alvin was a widower, living in the same house he'd lived in for over 40 years. His days looked the same: morning coffee, a walk down the driveway, watching the news, eating alone. One day while sitting at the window, he realized he hadn't done anything new in over a decade. Not because he didn't want to, but because he'd convinced himself that his time for trying had passed. That night, he signed up for an online photography class. He didn't know how to upload a photo, let alone edit one, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he dared to begin. Within months, Alvin was walking the neighborhood with a camera, capturing birds, sunlight, rusted mailboxes. He had a new sense of purpose and a new group of friends in his photo club. Real change doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to move across the country, write a memoir, or start a business. Though if you want to, why not? Sometimes change looks like trying Tai Chi in the park, taking a painting class at the senior center, or calling someone you've been distant from and saying, let's talk. Science supports this too. According to research from Harvard Health, the brain continues to form new neural pathways well into our 80s and beyond. That means your mind is still growing, still learning, still adapting. You are not frozen in time, and neither is your potential. But you have to believe it, because when you believe you're too old to change, you stop reaching. And when you stop reaching, your world shrinks. But when you stretch, even just a little, your world begins to open again. So the next time that inner voice says, it's too late, talk back to it. Remind yourself, it's only too late when I stop living, and I haven't stopped. Try one new thing this week, just one. Learn one phrase in another language, cook a new recipe, walk a different path, read a new genre of book. You don't need to be great at it. You just need to begin, because change doesn't belong to the young. It belongs to the brave. And at this point in your life, you've earned the right to be brave enough for anything. 4, isolating yourself emotionally. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You can have a phone full of contacts, a house with family dropping by, a calendar with doctor's appointments and church services, and yet inside feel like no one truly sees you. That's the subtle, silent weight of emotional isolation. And for many older adults, it sneaks in quietly. Not because they've chosen loneliness, but because they've slowly stopped sharing how they really feel. Maybe it started with the loss of a spouse, maybe with children moving away or friends passing on. Maybe you told yourself, I don't want to bother anyone, or they're busy with their own lives, or simply, they wouldn't understand. So you say, I'm fine even when you're not. You smile politely instead of saying, today was hard. You distract yourself with television or cleaning or scrolling through memories instead of picking up the phone to say, I could use someone to talk to. But here's the truth. Emotional silence slowly becomes emotional suffering. And the longer you keep everything inside, the heavier it becomes. According to the National Institute on Aging, chronic loneliness and emotional isolation in seniors is linked to higher risks of heart disease, depression, cognitive decline, and even premature death. The body and mind are deeply connected, and when the heart feels forgotten, the rest of you starts to follow. Let me tell you about Clarice. She's 82, fiercely independent. She lost her husband 5 years ago, and since then has done everything by the book. Pays her bills, keeps her yard trimmed, attends church. From the outside, she's fine. But one day, her neighbor Ruth noticed Clarice had been sitting in the same spot on her porch every day for a week, barely moving, barely speaking. When Ruth gently asked how she was doing, Clarice burst into tears, not because she was weak, but because someone finally asked. And when she started to talk, really talk, something shifted. It was like opening a window in a stuffy room. Her voice shook, but it came back. So did her laughter. That's the power of connection. It doesn't take much to change everything. You don't need a crowd. You need a lifeline. Here's what you can do if emotional isolation has crept into your life. Start with one real conversation a week, not about the weather or the news, but about you. Call an old friend, write a letter to a family member, and tell them how you're really doing. Join a senior discussion group, even if it's just online in a city or over the phone. If you feel lonely more often than not, talk to your doctor or a counselor, because emotional health is just as important as physical health. And remember this, sharing what's on your mind isn't a burden. It's a bridge. It's how we stay human. It's how we stay alive. You may be older, but you are not done loving, connecting, laughing, crying, or being known. The world still needs your stories. Someone needs your voice, and your heart still deserves to be heard. So please, don't hide it. 5, apologizing too much. Sorry, it slips out of your mouth before you even think about it. Sorry for taking too long to speak. Sorry for asking a question. Sorry for needing help. Sorry for not knowing how something works. Sorry, just for being. Maybe you've said sorry so many times in your life that it's become second nature, a habit, a reflex, a way to stay polite, soft, likable, especially as a woman, especially as someone who grew up in a time when being nice was expected above all else. But here's the hard truth. Over-apologizing chips away at your confidence and teaches others to do the same. When you say sorry too much, you send a quiet message to the world that you are somehow wrong for having needs, thoughts, feelings, or limits. You shrink yourself to make others more comfortable. And over time, that shrinking becomes internalized. You start believing that your presence should take up less space, your voice should be quieter, and your preferences don't matter as much. That's not humility, that's self-erasure. Let me tell you about Bernice. She's 73, a retired nurse and sharp as ever. But every time she spoke, whether in her knitting group or at the doctor's office, she began with, "I'm sorry," even when she wasn't interrupting, wasn't wrong, wasn't even off topic. One day, a younger friend gently pointed it out, and Bernice realized something. She had spent a lifetime apologizing for herself, and it was time to stop, because you should never feel the need to apologize for existing. Now, of course, sincere apologies are powerful. When we've hurt someone or made a mistake, "I'm sorry" is a sign of maturity and integrity. But when used constantly and unnecessarily, it becomes a way of undermining your own voice before it even has a chance to speak. So what can you do instead? Start by noticing when sorry appears in your speech. Pause. Ask yourself, is this really something I need to apologize for? Or am I just trying to soften myself? And then try replacing sorry with strength. Instead of "sorry I'm late," try "thank you for waiting." Instead of "sorry to bother you," say "do you have a moment?" Instead of "sorry I don't understand," say "could you explain that again, please?" These small shifts change the energy of a conversation. They remind you and the people around you that you deserve to speak and be heard without guilt. And don't be afraid to take up space. Your story, your experience, your wisdom, they matter more than you know. This isn't about becoming aggressive or losing your kindness. It's about reclaiming your confidence. It's about standing tall in who you are after a lifetime of caring, giving, and being strong for others. You don't have to say sorry for having questions, for needing rest, for being unsure, for growing older. You have nothing to apologize for. So say what you need to say. Ask for what you need. Be bold in your own quiet way. Because every time you choose clarity over apology, you remind the world that you're still here and still worthy of every ounce of respect and dignity. 6. Clinging to how things used to be. It's only natural to look back. After all, you've lived through decades of change. Some beautiful, some heartbreaking. You've watched the world shift around you. The music, the manners, the pace of life, even the way people communicate. It's all different now, and sometimes it can feel like the world has moved on without you. In those moments, it's easy to cling to the past, to say, back then, people respected their elders, to think things made more sense when I was younger, to quietly believe I was happier before everything changed. And maybe in some ways that's true. But here's what we don't often admit. When we hold on too tightly to how things used to be, we can start missing the life that's happening right in front of us. Let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with honoring your past. Your memories matter. Your story is important. But when nostalgia becomes a way to escape, rather than reflect, it can trap you in a loop of longing that keeps you from growing, connecting, and finding new joy. Let me tell you about Gerald. He's 81, a retired teacher, proud of the life he's lived. But for years, every conversation circled back to how much better things were. He missed his wife, who passed 5 years ago. He missed the classroom, the noise of kids, the daily rhythm of purpose. He resented technology, felt invisible in crowded places, and didn't trust the changes he saw in younger generations. And slowly, the present began to feel like a burden instead of a blessing. It wasn't until his granddaughter visited one weekend with a phone full of photos and a heart full of stories that something shifted. She showed him her artwork, her favorite songs, and videos of kids doing things he never imagined. He didn't understand all of it, but he smiled. He asked questions. He listened. And for the first time in a long time, he felt connected to her, to now. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting yourself step forward. When you cling to the way things were, you may unknowingly close yourself off from everything that still can be. New friendships, new skills, new hobbies, even new versions of love and laughter. Life didn't stop being meaningful after 70. It just started asking you to meet it in a different way. Here's something powerful to remember. The past is a place to visit, not to live. You can treasure your memories without making them the only thing you carry. You can honor what's behind you while still reaching toward what's ahead. So the next time you find yourself thinking, I wish things were like they used to be, take a breath and then ask, what might still be waiting for me now? Try something unfamiliar. Sit with someone younger and ask what they're passionate about. Let yourself be curious instead of critical. And if something feels strange or overwhelming, give yourself grace. You don't have to love everything new, but you owe it to yourself to stay open, to stay alive in your own story. Because this chapter of your life isn't just about looking back. It's about learning how to look forward again, with softness, with courage, and with hope. 7. Believing your voice doesn't matter anymore. There's a quiet kind of silence that isn't about peace. It's about giving up. It starts small. You stop correcting people when they get something wrong. You nod instead of offering your real opinion. You listen, but stop sharing. And over time, you begin to believe that maybe what you have to say no longer matters. Maybe you think you're too old to speak up in a world that moves fast and listens slow. Maybe you've been interrupted too many times. Maybe you've been told, directly or indirectly, that your thoughts are outdated, your advice no longer needed, or your memories irrelevant. But here's what I want you to hear, loud and clear. Your voice still matters. In fact, it may matter now more than ever. Because you're not just talking from ideas, you're speaking from experience, from lived truth, from lessons carved into your bones by time, love, loss, and resilience. And there's nothing more powerful than that. Let me tell you about Dolores. She's 86, once a school principal, once a mother of 4, now a widow who spends most of her time alone. For years, she stopped speaking up. At family dinners, at church groups, even in conversations with her doctor. She felt invisible. like her place had quietly been moved to the sidelines. Until one day, during a small community meeting, a young woman asked, "Has anyone here ever lived through a recession?" And Dolores spoke. She told stories of the 1970s, of food stamps, of dignity and survival. She saw eyes light up around the room, heads nodding, people asking, "What did you do? How did you cope?" And in that moment, something returned. Her voice, her purpose, her presence. It was never gone. It was just waiting to be invited back. You don't need a microphone or a podium. Your voice can live in a handwritten letter, in a story told over coffee, in a comment on a video, in a moment when you simply say, "Here's what I think." And don't underestimate the next generation. They're listening more than you think. They're hungry for guidance, for perspective, for realness. They may not say it, but they're looking to you, not just for approval, but for example. So speak. Speak about the mistakes you've made and what you've learned. Speak about love and what endures. Speak about the things that scare you and the moments that shaped you. Because when you silence yourself, the world loses something irreplaceable. But when you speak, you give others permission to be brave too. Your voice doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be honest and yours. So if you've been quiet lately, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that feels like fading, let this be your reminder. You still have stories worth telling, opinions worth sharing, truths worth honoring. Speak them, live them, own them. Because you haven't lost your voice. You just haven't used it lately. And I promise, the world still needs to hear it. If you've seen yourself in any of these 7 habits, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You're not broken, and you are most certainly not too late. These patterns, sitting too long, saying yes too often, holding on to the past, keeping quiet, shrinking your voice, they didn't appear overnight. They came from love, from survival, from trying to make things work for everyone else. But now in this season of your life, maybe for the first time, you get to ask, what works for me? Maybe this is the moment to stop living by default and start living by design. Not someone else's design, not who you were 20 years ago, but who you are now, today, with everything you've learned and everything you still have left to give. You don't need permission. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to choose. Choose to move your body. Choose to protect your time and energy. Choose to speak honestly, even if your voice shakes. Choose to release what no longer serves you and reach for what still might. Because this chapter right now isn't about what you've lost. It's about what you're finally free to become. And if anything in this message stirred something in you, even a small whisper, don't ignore it. Let it lead you somewhere new. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 habits are you ready to let go of? And what do you hope to reclaim in its place? Share your thoughts, your story, or even just one word in the comments. You never know who it might help. And if this spoke to you, take a moment to like, share, or subscribe so you don't miss more conversations that truly see you. We're in this season together, and it's far from over.